Like it. And you talk about you got to keep on doing it. This is not something that really happens overnight.
No.
Right. Yeah, it takes a tremendous amount of persistence. And I think especially during that time where we could have those negative thoughts that creep into play, and that self-doubt can really start to feed on each other. And I think that's why it's important for us to continue to get out there and get involved. Like, even if you don't have a job, there are plenty of things that you can do around your activity, around your community, and, you know, in your church or whatever you're involved in, because it's so important to keep that mind active. Because if you isolate, then you just, all of your fears become reality.
Stay connected, and I think you pointed out volunteering.
Volunteer. I was going to say exactly. Yeah. He hit it right on the head. Volunteer. One of the things I'm recommending people to do in this book is volunteer. Yeah. You lost your job, volunteer. I was on a plane coming back from a speaking engagement. A gentleman behind me had seen me on television. He came over and said, when we got off, he said, "Look, I got a problem. Could you got a minute?" I said, "Sure." He said, "I've been sending out my resumes for 6 months. Nothing happened." I said, "Okay." He said, "Well, what should I do?" I said, "Where do you want to work?" He told me where he wants to work. But they have no spaces. They have no place for me. I said, "Okay, volunteer. Go there for 2 weeks. Volunteer for 2 weeks and be excellent. Be better than they expect. Give more than they expect. And when your 2 weeks are over, see what happens. And if nothing happens, ask them for a referral or a reference." Well, he did it. I saw him about 2 months later. He said, "You know what happened?" I said, "What happened?" They found money. They found some money when my 2 weeks were over, hired me, and I'm making $10,000 more than I used to make in my last job. Wow. He said, "You were absolutely right." Folks, I'm telling you, volunteer. Volunteer, give, and nothing else. Going back to that depression issue, the grief issue, is that when you're helping others, you're not focused on your own problem, but you're helping others. And Martin Luther King says, service is what separates those who are great from those who are just good. Okay?
Yeah, that's very true. And kind of along that point, I know individuals that I've worked with who have gone through depression or some type of downtime. Volunteering has been huge because it's also allowed them to connect with community of people who think very similar things that they do, have a similar goal, and it's also helped them to discover other areas to go into, maybe opening up their minds to opportunities that they typically didn't see for themselves.
And they're making a contribution,
Absolutely.
So they feel good about themselves. You know, we ran some video. Our chopper had to go up last week. 7,000 people, you probably saw that in the paper, lining up for federal jobs in Northern Virginia. Thousands were turned away. This is a particularly tough time because, you know, looking for jobs can be impersonal. People aren't opening the doors. They're not returning emails. How important is just staying with it and being persistent and I guess patient too, you mentioned in your book.
Patience, persistence, and networking, okay? Networking. Work on getting a job like you work at your job. Work hard on getting a job. Just like you work, get up in the morning, 8 o'clock or whatever time, get your coffee and go to work getting a job, and then build your network. I believe your network determines your net worth. And you have to make a commitment and always look how you can help somebody else get what they want before you ask them for what you want. Because if you help them, then you have planted a seed. You have dug your well before you're thirsty. And you can use that later. You might not use it right now, but just try and help somebody else, get your network expanded. And I'm very grateful for my network. People I can call about something with my children or something with my family or just some advice. It's incredibly important.
In good times and in bad.
Yes, indeed.
All right, we'll be right back with much more on Viewpoint, so stay with us. And welcome back to Viewpoint. Chapter 3 now. Don't let your pride poison your prosperity. Willie, this jumped out at me. We're talking about jobs, and you say in your book, every job has value.
If it's legal and moral, it's honorable, okay? Martin Luther King said if a man is called to be a street sweeper, he should sweep streets as Michelangelo painted, as Beethoven created music, and as Shakespeare wrote poetry. He should sweep streets so well that all the host of heaven will say there lived a great street sweeper who did his job well. Do not let your pride get in the way of your prosperity, and that's what we find often in life. I had a friend who was in the same church I grew up in, and one day some years ago I called him. He was in New York. He wanted to be an actor. I called him. I said, "How you doing, man?" He said, "I can't talk right now. I'm fixing someone's toilet." I said, "What?" He said, "I'm fixing someone's toilet. I got to pay my bills. My kids need food. I'm fixing somebody's toilet. I'll call you back." That inspired me because he was a he was a fairly well-known actor. Well, he's gone on now to become a best writing screenplay actor. He's won all the awards. He's done very well. You would know his name if I called him. But he could not have gotten here if he hadn't been willing to do that then, because that got him through that little tough time. Sometimes we're going to have tough times, but we must not let our pride get in the way. People say, well, it's below us. If it's legal and moral, it's honorable work.
Dr. Jackson, is it tough to get somebody to see that light down the road that, hey, this, as we mentioned, is not permanent, and that something better is going to come from this?
Yeah, it can very much depend on the mindset, because there's some of us who have a very kind of negative focused mindset where it's like the glass is half empty.
Sure.
And more likely to take like a rejection from a job as taking it personally or an indication of their overall worth or competence, as opposed to the fact, well, this didn't work out, but maybe that's just an indication that I need to keep going. Maybe that's an indication that I need to expand my network. Maybe I need to take a look at maybe some other skills that I have that I haven't quite used, and really be entrepreneurial in a sense like that. So, and especially going through a time like this, having a more positive mindset. I know people hear that and it's like, you know, okay, what does that mean? But it really does make a difference, because how you frame these experiences will determine whether you stay stuck or whether you move forward.
Oh, yes, without a question.
Yeah.
Very much. How you view it.
Yeah.
Your
Absolutely.
view of it.
Yeah.
And you talk about that.
Yeah.
Don't take it personally, because it's not.
It's not personal, nor is it permanent. Okay, it's not personal, no permanent. And another great story about this that came out of this was I interviewed Duke Green, and many people in D.C. know Duke Green is a great entrepreneur. And he is now retired, has sold his company for a lot of money. But I interviewed him, and he said when he was the CEO of his IT company back in the 70s, there was a recession, and as the CEO, he didn't want to lose any of his great people. So he would work as the CEO from 8 o'clock in the morning till 6 o'clock in the evening, and then from 8 o'clock at night till midnight, he'd drive a trash truck to pay his own personal bills. And he said it wasn't personal, nor was it permanent. And I said, what do you say to people who say, I can't get a second job at McDonald's or at Walmart? He said, tell them to get over it, because it's not personal, nor is it permanent. That the great people are always willing to do things that are going to keep them going toward their goals.